Wow, this is fantastic, isn't it? I've been asked today to talk a bit about my journey, but I just want to try and get you to think a little bit slightly different about child sexual exploitation. The focus is on our children and keeping them safe, and that's exactly right. That is exactly right. We should be keeping our children safe. But there's... Oh, I've got... I did have a slide.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm going to do this without the slide, so you have to forgive me. So if you can imagine that across your desk came Jim and John raped Mary, what would your response be? It would be immediate, wouldn't it? You would react immediately to that. It's a very positive statement. You know exactly what to do. But some people get a bit worried about writing it like that. So they'll change it, and it'll come across your desk as Mary was raped by John and Jim. Now that's become passive, and the focus is on Mary. The next sentence is Mary was raped. We actually don't like the word rape, and we often don't write it. What we'll write is sexual exploitation. So Mary becomes, Mary is being sexually exploited. And then our identity focuses completely on the child and says, Mary's a sexually exploited victim. That's her identity. Now let me ask you, at what sentence did John and Jim drop off? Second sentence, didn't they? Do you know where they are now? We're very, very busy with Mary. We're working really hard with Mary. All the resources are on Mary. Everybody is doing everything they can to keep Mary safe. Fantastic. John and Jim, however, are up the road now recruiting Debbie, Susan, and a whole host of other young people. So while we are working with our children, we have to keep our focus on those offenders too. And I know here in Northampton a lot is being done. I've been asked to actually talk about my journey in CSE, which is different for me, to stand up here and tell you about my journey personally. And I think if you told me what I'd have to do in the early stages, then I definitely wouldn't have done this. If I tell you that in a previous job, I have no qualifications at all, other than my cycling proficiency test, which I took when I was 10. And my day job was as a school cook, and my add-on job was a clown as an entertainer for children. And I ended up chairing the Prince's Trust for Derbyshire and was approached by a parent who had a daughter who was being very, very abused, and we now would see as sexual exploitation. At the time, nobody wanted to deal with her because she was a prostitute. And she'd made that choice. She was 12 when she'd been picked up. And our responses to that child were very, very poor. I am going back to 1998. And that was when I first came to the table as a school cook and a clown, not knowing a thing about child prostitution, child sexual exploitation, or any of that journey. I've met a group of similar people who were starting to deal with child sexual exploitation around and about. Somebody from Doncaster, somebody from Leeds, a number of people, probably about 12 of us all together. And we'd meet up occasionally and kind of share experiences, and we were known as the M1 group. The M1 group then became the National Working Group for Children and Young People Sexually Exploited, which, trust me, does not fit on a name badge. And then in 2006, we constituted the NWG as an organisation that was officially there, a charity, to start and pull together everybody. Because what we were seeing, by this time I was managing a project in Derby that we'd set up in response to this parent who'd contacted us. And just to give you a flavour, in the first year, 1999, we saw 17 children, and we thought that was a lot. We did our thematic review for CEOP in 2012, was it 2013? We had 554 cases over a period of 3 years in Derby City. Derby's a very small city, and we didn't go outside of the city at all. So for us, it was a huge, huge problem in Derby City, and we advocated with the National Working Group that people needed to work together and to share resources because there were so few on the ground. I'm astounded today. When I left Safe and Sound and moved to the National Working Group in July 11, I was the worker with Heather as part-time. Some of you may remember Heather, who coordinated the network at that point. She was part-time. I was full-time. That was July 11. And at the beginning of April last year, we had 2,800 members as part of the network. We had 300 plus resources on the website, and we held 2 or 3 practitioner forums a year at the beginning. April, we moved from 2,800 members to today just over 9,000. That's how much this explosion has been in the last year, 2 years, around trying to manage child sexual exploitation. And I think one of the important things is that when you all start to work together, then do you realise how much you can learn off one another and better protect. There is no one organisation anywhere that can get this right on their own. As authorities, we often end up with the case when the damage has been done, when the rape has happened, when they're very seriously exploited, and we're in a damage limitation. So it takes our community and everybody in it, all of our neighbourhood teams, in order to create that wave of awareness, prevention, education, to stop young people reaching the stage of actually being damaged. I think the network now has grown considerably. I think over the past year, we've run 17 odd forums. We run seminars constantly. Some of you came to the conference, which was a 2-day event. Just to give you a brief, we ran for the first time a CSE Awareness Day on the 18th of March, and I know many of you took part in that. We saw tweets going across the whole of the UK, in excess of 2.4 million tweets going out. We saw hundreds of events happening across the whole of the UK, from people who had hired a cinema and put on films all day long, to people who were running a week-long's worth of events, other people who'd put up billboards, other people that had got market stalls in the street. Manchester ran a week-long session of awareness, and you can see how people are getting on board and working with this, and that is really, really crucial. There is lots coming to help you to do your job. There's a huge amount coming to help you to do your job. We've got some things on our table that are freebies that we can send away with you. I'd bring your attention to specific things like the Ask app. If you're working with young people directly, that is an app that was produced by the young people in Dundee about how they got the information around sexual health out. Now, I think it's really, really good because A, it was written by young people for young people. It's a downloadable app on their smartphones, so Android or Apple. And it does mean that they've got the information to hand on anything to do with sexual health and relationships. So it talks about consent, it talks about are you ready, it talks about contraception, it talks about pregnancy, it talks about a whole load of things. in a young person's language that allows them to get some of that information there. I think one of the biggest things that I have concerns about and continually do and advocate all of the time for are two things really. Consent, what is consent, and young people's perception of what is consent is really concerning, because actually they think because they're cornered and they have no option and that they then agree, then that's okay, that's consent. Let me just demonstrate. Let me try and get this across to you. So let's just do one very small activity. Can I ask you all to stand up? Absolutely fantastic. I think, oh no, she stood up. Right, sit down again. That's so simple, wasn't it? Today you've put me in a position of authority. Collectively, you could have got together and said, I'm not doing that. There's no point to it. I know you're going to make a fool of me, or it's going to be pointless. Well, it was pointless, wasn't it? But you didn't. You wanted to please me today because you've put me here on the stage, haven't you? And so when I ask you to do something, you're doing it. Now let's turn that over and let's make me a 13-year-old girl or a boy, and I'm in a room full of 6, 7, 8, 9 adults who are saying, I can't get home. Perhaps I've been taken there in a car and have no idea where I am. Perhaps I travelled there in the boot of a car. Perhaps I have no idea where I am. Perhaps I'm in a hotel room. And I'm suddenly faced with these people who tell me I have got to perform oral sex or take part in sexual activity. What am I going to do? Am I going to kick off? Because what happens to me then? I'm probably going to say, how can I get out of this quickly? How can I get out of this safely? I'm probably going to say, okay then. Now you tell me if that's consent, because to me that isn't. That is about having no choice. That is about the consequences of what will happen to me if I don't consent. So bear in mind, when you talk about she chose to go, he chose to go, what control mechanisms are around that child? Have they got film of them? Have they got them blackmailed? Are they telling them that they'll rape the mum, they'll get the little sister, they'll kill the dad, they'll firebomb the house, they'll do all of those things? Are they telling them that? So when you talk about consent, just think about what that child is going through, and remember that at 12 or 13, they do not have the capacity or the articulation to be able to say, no. We don't teach our children to be authoritative. We don't teach them to go, no, at all. We're a polite society. You know we are. How many of you have been invited to dinner with somebody up the road and you really don't want to go? They're the most boring couple in the world. Do you go, not coming, you're boring? You don't, do you? What you do is make up an excuse. We're not polite. We are polite. We're not authoritative, and we don't teach our children to be that. So when in that position, they do not have the tools or the articulation to be able to get out of it. And I think that's really important. Now, and my other bugbear then is boys and young men. Because we often think that boys are presenting as young offenders and difficult antisocial behaviour, and we very rarely explore what is the driver behind that. So often we are putting our young men through the criminal justice system, and many, many of those convictions are now unsafe. If you go back and look at the conviction and the scenario around it, particularly if they've been moved around or they've been given money or asked to go places, then they might well retrospectively fit into the NRM, the National Referral Mechanism. It's a statement, it's a civil process that takes young people through the trafficking legislation and identifies whether they're a victim of trafficking. It doesn't need you to be moved to be trafficked, harboured, received, facilitated, moved are all part of internal trafficking, and the movement of our own Indigenous children is as significant as that we're seeing from young people coming abroad. If they've got an NRM status and they then are tasked to go and steal or to break in somewhere, and underneath all of that is the exploitation, they cannot be prosecuted for symptoms that they are displaying and acts that have taken out, because they're not in control, they are being controlled. And I would say to you, the hardest young man to spot as a sexually exploited or raped victim would be that young man that is from a BME community with a disability that is exploring his sexuality. Because all of those things will take precedent in your thinking before you actually look at what is happening to that young person and how he is being manipulated within his arena. So those are the kind of two big ones for me. I know a lot of you have already been to our stall, and it's clear that many of you aren't aware of the NWG. The NWG has grown so much, there's over 900 resources on our website. If you are part of the council here, you are automatically have the right into the back of our website. So it's a membership website. Just ring the office and tell them that you want to go onto the website to get at the resources, and they will add you. And behind there are interactive tools. Cody's Choices, Dean's Choices are two, if you are working directly with young people, are vital for the work that you do. They are interactive maps of towns and cities. You click on bits, so if the children decide where they want to go to, they might want to go to the park, they might want to go on a bus, they might want to go to the shopping centre, they might want to go to a hotel, and you click on that and it takes you through a scenario of what might well happen in those situations. Cody's Choices we built with Dean Cody, some of you will have met already, County Terrorism, Greater Manchester Police, who wrote it for radicalisation, and we substituted the story for CSE, and then everybody came back and said, this is fantastic, we need one for boys. So now we have Dean's Choices. So Dean Cody will live on for a very long time through these two programmes. They are really, really good in terms of getting young people debating together in classroom situations what are right and what is wrong. I think it's really important as well. I just say, just tell me when my time's up, because I'll just waffle otherwise. I'm okay still. I think when you're working with young people, you need to think in almost in three ways. And I picked this up when I was in Holland working with Free of Friesland out there, and I think they put it quite succinctly, really. They work with single complex cases, multiple complex cases and culturally complex cases. And when you actually explored what they meant by that, the single complex case was Daisy Sunshine. We've all got Daisy Sunshines on our caseload. No vulnerabilities in her background. There's nothing in her family that makes her particularly vulnerable, or him. The only thing that makes them vulnerable is the fact that they're a teenager. The wrong place, the wrong time, the wrong set of circumstances. So an example of that would be a young person that was in my project previously, who had gone along with somebody because she was concerned about them. Grade A student, nothing wrong with her. She went along with somebody else because she was really worried about this young person and the way that she was behaving. She changed, really anxious. When she got there, she was locked in, she was raped, she was filmed. And then she was absolutely in it up to her neck because they got that control over her. They were going to spread it around school, they were going to send it to her parents, all sorts of things. So she did whatever they wanted her to do. Clearly the starting point for Daisy Sunshine is at that point. But Donna Daredevil, and we've all got Donna Daredevils, we've all got a lot of Donna Daredevils, multiple vulnerabilities in their background, drug and alcohol families, bereavement, all sorts of perhaps learning difficulties, all sorts of things that make them additionally vulnerable. And I know through my work with inquiries and serious case reviews and reviews of LSCBs that there are a very large proportion of young people that become vulnerable to child sexual exploitation have suffered some sort of bereavement in their past of a significant individual. I'll give you a case example. One young lady, just one line in social services file said, "Grandma died." What nobody realised was that Grandma was the main carer. She lived most of her time with Grandma. Grandma made sure she got to school. Grandma gave her her dinner money. Grandma sorted her out. Grandma bought her her chores because Mum was drug dependent. And Grandma dying was massive, but it was never taken on board. And so she became back to Mum as the carer and hence ended up in child sexual exploitation. Clearly, the starting point for Donna Daredevil is not the point when she entered child sexual exploitation, but much earlier on. And any of our therapeutic won't work, our interventions won't work unless we start at the right point. And then Holland have this cultural complexity, which is what they call forced marriage. I would explore that here and expand it, because I think the cultural complexities are forced marriage. What is happening in forced marriages and leading to child sexual exploitation is massive. The dowry that goes with some of the young people certainly in travelling communities and things like that, and then they have to go out and work for that and get that money back in the dowry. All of those sorts of things are going on. The starting point for that young person is different. The cultural complexities around somebody from an LGBT group, the starting point for that is different. Young people from BME backgrounds, the starting point is different. Young people in a gang culture that have been caught up in child sexual exploitation, the starting point is different. You have to explore the case and you have to see what else you need to put in place, because if we only deal with the exploitation, the minute you close the case, they'll be back and re-entering that whole world. I think today is fantastic, because if I go back to 1999, where nobody would listen to us, I was told that I was a woman on a mission. Well, I was. I didn't expect it to be this big. I was told that I just wanted to make my own empire, that actually I got in the way of real policing, to where we are today, with Northampton having their own toolkit, their own CSE team, their own real proactive approach to getting CSE dealt with. This can't change and be right overnight. We want it to, but the reality is we have to do this incrementally. And I think today is a major step forward for Northampton. I think you're brilliant. We're there to help. Do remember, we have a full specialist team, police, safeguarding, health, youth participation, that can help you if you're stuck on something and you just want to ring for advice. Get on the website, use those resources. If you've got a resource that you use that you think will be really good, add it, because that's how the website works. None of these resources, or very few of them, are ours. They're all the practitioners out there who want to share it. It's your network, use it, make it work for you. Thanks very much.